Hari Om, everybody. Good evening. So wonderful to have you all back. And we continue our journey in more depth, learning, understanding Kindle life. So let's begin this session with our prayers.
समस्त जन कल्याणी निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। Hari Om to everyone. On Friday we saw what is man. Man principally, his mind has 4 stages of evolution. The first stage is called the stone man. They are just as indifferent and ignorant and as totally unaware of the external circumstances and environment, just like the stones, inanimate. The second are the men who are like plant men. Such men are steeped in inertia, react only to exaggerated happenings. Only if there is things to do in their level, then otherwise they will not indulge. The third level are the animal men. These animal men who are desire-ridden, passionate and energetic. Their intellectual discrimination is limited and being always extroverted. They constantly engage themselves in infighting, pickering and aggrandizing for the enjoyment of their kith and kin and themselves. In fact, as the book says, a wide cross-section of human beings belong to this category, and their activities are mainly guided by feelings and impulses rather than by discrimination and understanding. Only for me and mine. However, the fourth evolution of the mind, when we have men, the faculty of intellectual discrimination reaches no bound. It passes through. A rare few that develop a universal love and constantly engage themselves in activity under the guidance of their superior intellect are called men. They alone can claim prestige, dignity, and glory of man. A complete man. The epitome of all creation, as the book says itself. Man is the roof and crown of creation.
That's true. So let us see further ahead how this is possible for all of us to evolve to that category and reach the highest that is possible for man. And it is possible. Chapter 20, Essence in Man. A man must know his real identity if he desires to maintain a proper and healthy relationship with the world at large. Every human being is constituted of physical, mental, and intellectual equipment and the conscious principle, which lends sentience to this equipment. Human development culminates in finding one's identity with the conscious principle, the spiritual core of one's personality. So we have come to know over here that a human being essentially constitutes of all the 3 that we know: physical, mental, intellectual, and the core component is the consciousness due to which he is alive. And the human development, that is when we go through these stages and we reach our highest stage, that human development culminates in finding one's identity with the conscious principle, the spiritual core of one's personality.
Highest goal. That is the highest goal.
Highest goal. Now let us see how this is possible. The physical body is the grossest aspect of our personality. The mind is the subtler equipment and the intellect the subtlest of the three. The three together constitute matter, which by itself is inert and insentient. The consciousness is the spirit in us. Excuse me. The consciousness is the spirit in us which propels, motivates, and causes this equipment to function. The consciousness without equipment has no experience or no activities of its own. It is the combination of the two, namely spirit and matter, which causes the manifestation of life and activity. So very clearly now it is understood, please excuse me, that man is made up of physical and the spiritual. The physical has three aspects, out of which the intellect is the subtlest. The body being the grossest, then the mind subtle, and the intellectual the subtlest. But these three together are known as matter. And this matter, without the consciousness, remains inert and insentient. And the consciousness also by itself cannot experience anything at all without having the body. So the combination of the body and the consciousness is required for us to be humans.
And experience anything.
And of course, experience. A similar phenomena obtaining in the objective world presents a clear idea of the structure and functioning of the human mechanism. A human equipment is like an electric bulb, a heater or a refrigerator. The bulb, heater and the refrigerator have no capacity by themselves to light, to heat or to refrigerate until they come in contact with electricity. Just as consciousness functioning through the body, mind, intellect equipment manifests in itself, in life. So clearly Gurudev is explaining to us that we all may look different, have different bodies, different type of intellect, so on and so forth. Physically, just like the bulb heater and the refrigerator, and all of these are different from each other. But all of them run because of one principle, which is electricity. Just like the consciousness is there running through each and every one of everything that is alive which exists. When man identifies with his physical personality, he merely lives as a physical personality. He merely lives as a physical being bereft of emotions and intellectual discrimination, and he constantly engages himself in fighting, procuring, and aggrandizing wealth and the objects of the world for his sense gratification. Sensual desires are insatiable, and more they are sought for and indulged in, the more they swarm in legions. Thus, man, living at the level of the body, is ever agitated and consumed by vain desires. Is that right, Jagdish?
Totally. I mean, Gurudev has made it amply clear. If we correlate these words, this chapter, with the previous chapter and think a little, we'll come to know what level of evolution this man would be, the man of his words.
Yes.
He would be at what level? We must try to connect these thoughts together. Then the book really opens itself to us. Please, we'll go ahead.
But when man identifies himself with the emotional aspect in him, he lives on a plane higher than that of the former. His mind expands to accommodate the welfare of others as well. The feelings of love and brotherhood for others provide him a better and subtler satisfaction than what mere physical indulgence can give. Consequently, his sensual demands surrender in favor of those whom he loves. As man ascends higher and identifies himself with his intellect, he develops discrimination in the light of which his emotions and thirst for physical indulgence are dispelled. For example, a scientist or a politician fired with an intellectual idea or ideology has neither an emotional attachment to his kith and kin nor a physical appetite to satisfy himself with while he is engrossed in his work. So, from the first physical, we have seen the difference in the emotional capacity where a man expands his mind and accommodates love and caring for others, and he surrenders his sensual demands or the lower demands in favor of whom he loves. So he gives credence, preference to people whom he loves. And as man grows higher intellectually, where he is completely involved in something higher, which two examples have been given, one of a politician and one of a scientist. At those times, when he is completely involved in his work, he does not remember his kith or kin, or he does not remember any other objectives that he has to fulfill. His mind is totally focused, single-pointed on his work. The core of the human personality is the consciousness, which is the life center around which all the activities of the body, mind, and intellect revolve. It remains ever changeless and immovable, like an axle in the wheel, but causes all changes and movements to occur.
Very good.
When man succeeds in identifying with this changeless, immovable consciousness principle within him, he is no longer victimized by the changing phenomena of perceptions, emotions, and thoughts, but becomes the supreme lord of them all. The intellectual pursuits, emotional attachments, and physical cravings of such a man naturally withers and falls away like petals of a flower when the fruit emerges. Religion teaches us this art of focusing our attention on the spiritual core, which is our real nature. And when we understand the infinite dimensions of our being, we develop in our experience of the supreme bliss a total dispassion for anything that the material world can offer.
Oh, absolutely amazing this is. That's why in my messaging today, I had told people, Ashri, that we are going to read something incredible today.
That's true.
Incredible this is.
Earlier on, we have also read that the world of objects, they agitate the mind. Whenever our one desire is fulfilled, we can see from our own personal experiences that there is always something more that we want. Like I've just bought a new sofa. So on that sofa now I want to put new cushions. When I put new cushions on it, okay, I think a beautiful flower pot next to it will look better. Just an example, of course. But this is how our mind goes on. Once one desire is fulfilled, another is ready to take its place. And we get more and more and more involved in these desires. It is never ending. Always that attachment is there. And I would really, really like to read this particular paragraph.
Yeah, go ahead.
Once again, let us deeply try to understand this paragraph. The core of the human personality is the consciousness, which is the life center around which all activities of body and intellect revolve. We have seen, just like electricity, if the consciousness is not there, nothing else is there. This consciousness, it remains ever changeless and immovable, like an axle in the wheel. Right, Jagdish? He knows better. In the car, the axle remains stationary. It doesn't go up and down or does not rotate or anything of probably rotates. But it remains in one place. But as it moves, it causes all other things, wheels and so on and so forth, to move too. So this is exactly what consciousness does. It remains changeless, but everything else moves because of that consciousness. So when man succeeds in identifying with this changeless, immovable conscious principle within him, he is no longer victimized by the changing phenomena of perceptions, emotions, and thoughts, but becomes the supreme lord of them all.
So at this point, if we see the title of this chapter, Essence in Man. So let me put this title as, what is essence in man? Question mark. The answer is this consciousness principle. The essence of man.
So let us see some of the word meanings of this chapter. I have chosen the essence also. That over here, essence in man means the intrinsic nature of every human being.
Without which nothing can happen.
Sentience means capacity to experience. Inert and insentient are coming almost together. Inert is inactive, which has no power of action or movement. And insentient is incapable of any experience. What is to know, especially in this chapter, is human development culminates in finding one's destiny with the conscious principle, the spiritual core of one's personality. And we are essentially a combination of the physical body. The three aspects constitute matter and the consciousness which causes the manifestation of life and activity. To ponder, especially in this chapter, there are so many nice things. I've written a few points. Thus, man living at the level of body, physical level, is forever agitated and consumed by vain desires. A man who's only at the physical level, who always wants something or the other, and sometimes he gets, sometimes he doesn't get. So all of it is constantly causing him agitations. At the emotional level, he starts to accommodate others and expands his mind, praise others. And as he ascends higher, he drops the craving for lower things. Finally, he identifies with the consciousness principle and recognizes his real nature.
In the next chapter, we are going to come back on these points. We will come to these points.
Yes, and the next chapter is absolutely incredible. So let's pay good attention to it. I ask all of you to forgive me. I seem to be having a slight cough. So please excuse me for that. Let's go on to the most beautiful chapter, chapter number 21, the path of divinity. Man is essentially divine, but the divinity in him is veiled by the unbroken series of desires and thoughts arising in his bosom. A variety of these grades and concentration of these create the variety of human beings. To remove the encrustation of desires and thoughts and unfold the divinity inherent in man is the ultimate goal envisaged by the scriptures. Isn't that beautiful? Yes. So what has been given to us, that divinity, that conscious principle which is within us, that we of course know, without which we will not be alive. But that conscious principle, we are almost never aware of, we are never in touch of. It is sort of as if it doesn't exist in us. And the whole aim of the scriptures is for us to get in touch with this conscious principle, because that is our true nature, our true identity. And what has happened to it is that it has been encrusted, completely shelled off with what? Of desires and thoughts. Constant stream of desires, small or big, but it's always there. And this ever-flowing mind, which is a stream of thoughts, it's continuously there. And so much so that it has enveloped this whole consciousness, which we just don't seem to.
And we will know in few minutes what is desire and what is thoughts. Please.
Let's go ahead. A scientific analysis of the psychological being in man reveals 3 thought conditions under which the human mind functions. They are called in Vedanta as the sattva, the pure and the noble. I must tell you that many of you in your books, if you have, the word sattva unfortunately is missing, as I have noticed.
If it is the same,
Some printing error,
same
if it is the same edition. So for those who it's not there, please know, they are called in Vedanta as the, and there is the word sattva.
S-A-T-T-V-A, sattva. Please continue.
So let us just read the sentence again.
Yeah.
A scientific analysis of the psychological being in man reveals 3 thought conditions under which the human mind functions. They are called in Vedanta as the sattva, the pure and the noble, the rajas, the passionate and agitated, and the tamas, the dull and the inactive state. Combinations of these 3 states of mind in various permutations determine the individual personalities. In fact, the noble, ignoble, or indifferent aspects in the character and conduct of persons are regulated by the proportion in which the 3 constituents are mixed. Isn't that fantastic?
Super. It is actually explaining, the book is explaining to us something which we may have never thought of, something which we may have never heard of, or even if we have heard, we've not understood what is Rajatama and Sattva.
Yes, and then it also explains to us, we ourselves and the different type of people that we see, if we ever wonder as to why a person is like that. Now we know what makes him that way. The inner personality of every individual is determined by these 3 types of mind thoughts: the rajas, the sattva, the rajas, and the tamas. And we have also got their, what are they made of? Like the rajas, which is there, which most of us actually fall into that category, will be the passionate and the agitated, the sattva, which are the pure and the noble, and tamas, which is the dull and inactive state.
Actually, all human beings go in all these 3 phases sometime or the other.
Yeah, so
but there is something called as predominance of one of the 3 or a combination, which will come to know.
Yeah. And it is the combination of these which makes us an individual. Tamas is a state of mind in complete inertia, indolence, and heedlessness, where there is no consistency of purpose, softness of emotion, or nobility of action. Rajas is a condition of mind when it is agitated and stormy, passionate and ambitious, and constantly riddled with desires, emotions, and activities. Sattva is the subtlest of the 3, a state of mind with balanced joy, serenity, and creative poise when human contemplation is available in its entire heritage. How clearly and beautifully explained what are the 3 states and what are the characteristics of all the 3 states.
This, we are only speaking of the mind.
These are the 3 thoughts.
Imagine, we know our bodies. We want to know our mind. And Gurudev is exactly doing that, taking us step by step forward, closer to understand our inner equipment. Please.
These 3 types of thoughts form the material with which the human mind and intellect are composed. So now you will understand when we speak about the texture of the mind, which we have been reading.
Quality
earlier.
and texture, Gurudev has been saying.
So this is what it will be made of. The difference between the mind and intellect is, therefore, only in their respective functions. The mind is an instrument of feelings and emotions, while the intellect is the one which discriminates and judges. The human discrimination or discerning faculty falls under 2 distinct and different categories, depending upon the field in which it operates. When discrimination is directed towards the world of objects, which is the realm of objective sciences, it is called gross intellect or sthula buddhi.
Sthula buddhi.
But the same faculty, when applied subjectively to discriminate between the spirit and the matter, or the transcendental and the terrestrial, gains the status of subtle intellect or Sukshma Buddhi.
Sukshma Buddhi.
So going forward, now we understood the texture and the quality, what it is made up of or what it is. Now they're given that the discrimination faculty is also of two types. One is called the Sthula Buddhi and the other is called the Sukshma Buddhi. The Sthula Buddhi is when you have to discriminate between the objective sciences, the object matter, and the Sukshma Buddhi is when you have to discriminate between the spiritual and the secular, or transcendental and the terrestrial. So the gross and the subtle. So these are the different distinctions. Slowly you will be introducing yourselves to the Vedantic terminology, which we started off with as Rajas, Sattva, Rajas and Tama. And now the two types of Buddhi also, which is the Sthula Buddhi of gross, discrimination of the gross, and Sukshma Buddhi, the discrimination between the transcendental and the matter form, the gross. This explains why a person brilliant in his application in the material and the secular world fails to understand, much less appreciate, the subtler import of the scriptures. However sharp the gross intellect may be, it cannot penetrate and understand the truth beyond the realms of matter. It is like attempting to use a sharp axe to shave one's beard.
When we come back, we'll explain to this because it's an important words.
Animals and even plants possess, to an extent, a rudimentary intellect to discriminate and understand the external world, but they totally lack the subtle capacity to discriminate between the real and the unreal. Man alone has, in his subtle intellect, the unique capacity to delve into and beyond the layers of matter and recognize the divinity within. The divinity of the self in us is obscured by the three different patterns of thoughts in our bosom. The thoughts flowing in our mind are manifestations of the related desires entertained by us. Hence, when the desires are overcome, the divinity within unfolds itself. The Bhagavad Gita beautifully describes the three types of wailing over the self caused by these desires. Let us go ahead, read the whole chapter and come back to it. The sattvic or the pure and noble desires also veil the self in us. But the veiling is like the smoke covering a fire. Even a passing breeze removes the smoke. So too, a little prayer or meditation takes away the subtle desires. The rajasic desires are those that are passionate and egocentric, and they cover the self like dust on the mirror. In this case, an effort is necessary to wipe the dust off. Likewise, individual effort as directed by religion alone can remove these desires. The third type of desires, called the tamasic, means those that are obstinate, arrogant, and totally egoistic. The divinity lies enveloped in them like a fetus in a womb. The indication is that these desires cannot be removed forthwith by mere effort. It takes a good deal of time and patience, like that of a fetus, to grow and emerge out of the womb. Religion helps us to chasten our desires and thoughts so as to ultimately end them. And as we rise from the tamas to the divinity, gradually unfolds itself, and when the last traces of sattvic desires are also eliminated, man becomes God. So, our journey from man to God and what are the obstacles in that journey have been so beautifully described in this chapter.
Man becomes God.
We have spoken last about the Buddhi, which was the Sthula Buddhi and the Sukshma Buddhi. And then we are going ahead and we are seeing the desires that we have. And desires also we have found are of three types, which are within our bosom also. And those are also sattvic and noble desires. But these desires, as we have seen, the incrustation which is there on the consciousness or the spirit or the real self, which is us, is of three types: the sattvic, the rajasic, and the tamasic. Now, the sattvic desire can be pure and noble. What does this mean? Sattvic can be noble. Sattvic and rajasic and tamasic desires, we need to understand a little better with good examples.
Yeah.
So what we should do is, I would request all of you to read this particular chapter very carefully. You will probably have some questions that need to be answered. And when we consider sattvic to be so pure and noble, how is it that there are desires over there?
And it is
what happens?
One of the veiling factor. How is sattvic veiling factor?
Sattva we consider to be so pure. It is mentioned it is pure and noble. So tomorrow we take up and go further on this very, very interesting journey. I hope you have enjoyed this lecture and look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. So let us end this session today with prayers.
Asito ma satkamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityormamrutam gamaya. Om Purnamad Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.